Hollywood, September 1962. Universal Studios backlot. The afternoon sun beats down mercilessly on the dusty, Western street set. Temperature pushing 95 degrees. Not a cloud in the California sky. 40 of Hollywood's biggest Western stars have gathered for a charity fast draw competition to raise money for polio. Research. This isn't just another publicity stunt. This is validation in an industry built on illusion and camera tricks. Speed with a Colt 45 is the one thing that cannot be faked. The wooden sidewalks creak under the weight of expensive boots. Photographers adjust their lenses. Reporters check their notepads. Studio executives smoke cigars in whatever shade they can find. Everyone knows their milker is still at a caboose about to witness something special. The question is, who will emerge as Hollywood's fastest gun? Glenn Ford stands apart from the crowd, 45 years old, weathered face calm as still water. His leather holster hangs low on his right hip, worn smooth from decades of practice. The gun inside, a Colt single action. Army, sits perfectly balanced and ready. Ford doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. He's already the fastest draw in Hollywood. Everyone in the industry knows it. The stopwatch from the fastest gun alive set 6 years ago still holds the unofficial record, 0.4 seconds from leather to target. Not 0.5. Not 0.6. 0.4 of a second. Faster than conscious thought itself. But today isn't really about Ford, today is about the new generation. The young lions prowling Hollywood's backlots, hungry for recognition, hungry for respect, hungry for the invisible crown that sits on Glenn Ford's graying head. If you want to see more stories about Hollywood legends who earned their respect through genuine skill, not mod, just camera magic, subscribe to Glenn Ford Hidden Legacy. Clint Eastwood adjusts his black hat, 32 years old, all sharp angles and calculated cool. Rawhide has made him a household name across America, but television success doesn't carry the same weight as film. Legacy. Not in Hollywood. Not where it matters. Eastwood is here to change that narrative. Here to prove that the old guard's time has passed. Here to show that the future of Westerns belongs to a new breed of actor. The competition begins with the amateur division. Local actors, stuntmen, extras, all eager to test themselves against real professionals. Their draws are clumsy and obvious. Hands shake with nerves. Guns catch on leather, holsters. Times hover around 2 seconds, sometimes 3. The crowd is polite, but unimpressed. These men are trying to be cowboys. The professionals are about to show them what cowboys actually look like. Ford watches without expression, his pale blue eyes taking in every detail. Each contestant might as well be Tills, moving underwater compared to what's coming. He's seen this level of competition before. Good enough for Peaceabud. Movies where quick cuts and clever editing can hide the flaws. Not good enough for this. Not when everything happens in real time with nowhere to hide. Then come the established stars. The men who've made careers playing gunfighters and lawmen. James Arness draws his buntline special in 1.2 seconds. Respectable time. The crowd applauds politely. Hugh Curry. O'Brien manages 0.9 seconds. Much better. Dale Robertson surprises everyone with 0.8 seconds. Very good indeed. Each performance raises the bar and tightens the tension in the desert air. The times keep dropping. 0.7. 0.6. The crowd grows quieter with each demonstration. They're witnessing something extraordinary. These aren't just actors anymore. These are genuine fast draw. Artists who've spent years perfecting their craft. Men who understand that in the Old West. Being slow meant being dead. Eastwood steps forward when his name is called. The crowd goes completely silent. Here's the moment they draft came to see. New Hollywood challenging old Hollywood. Television taking on the silver screen. The future. Confronting the past. Eastwood's stance is textbook perfect. Feet spread shoulder-width apart. Knees slightly bent for balance. Right. Hand hovering just inches from his gun grip. But there's something theatrical about his preparation. Something performed and deliberate. His fingers dance above the holster like a concert pianist preparing for Carnegie Hall. He's putting on a show even before the draw begins. The timekeeper raises his starter pistol. Eastwood's eyes narrow in concentration. His breathing slows and tocks, deepens. Every muscle in his body coils like a spring ready to release. Draw! Eastwood's hand snaps down to his gun. The motion is smooth and clean, a perfect arc of controlled violence. His Colt clears leather in one fluid movement. No wasted motion. No hesitation. The gun comes up and levels butyrate at the target with mechanical precision. The crowd holds its collective breath. The timekeeper checks his stopwatch twice, then a third time to be certain. His eyes widen in surprise. 0.7 seconds. Applause erupts from the gathered crowd. Photographers surge forward, flashbulbs popping like miniature. Lightning strikes. Eastwood tips his hat with that famous half-smile playing across his lips. It's a very good time. Good enough to win most competitions in America. Good enough to establish him as a legitimate fast draw, Tannis-creant artist. But not good enough to win today. Eastwood walks over to where Ford stands in the meager shade of a false front saloon. His confidence is visible. In every step, he's just posted one of the fastest times anyone has ever seen. He has every reason to feel good about his performance. That's going to be tough to beat, Glenn, Eastwood says, his voice carrying just the right amount of respect, mixed with confidence. Ford nods politely, but says nothing in response. His eyes never leave the competition area where the next contestant is preparing for his attempt. Eastwood tries again. Course, maybe the old ways are still the best ways. All that practice on the backlots, all sheaf, those B-westerns, must add up after a while. There's something in Eastwood's tone, not quite mockery, but not quite respect either. The suggestion that Ford's skill comes from quantity over quality, that he's fast because he's old and has had time to practice, not Akamboi because he possesses any special talent. Ford turns his head slowly and looks at Eastwood with those pale blue eyes that have stared down more movie villains than any actor in Hollywood history. When Ford speaks, his voice is quiet but carries clearly in the desert air. "You draw pretty for the cameras, Clint." "Pretty gets the job done," Eastwood replies, his smile faltering just slightly. "Sometimes," Ford says, then turns back to watch the competition. The exchange is brief, but loaded with meaning. In just a few words, Ford has identified the fundamental Rawhide difference between them. Eastwood draws for effect, Ford draws for results. Eastwood performs, Ford functions. The distinction matters more than anyone realizes. The timekeeper calls Ford's name. The entire crowd shifts and turns, sensing that something electric is building in the air. This isn't just about charity anymore. This isn't about raising money for a good cause. This is about charity and something deeper and more fundamental. This is about legacy. Ford walks to the firing line with no fanfare, no preparation, no theatrical warm-up routine. He simply stands bien paid of legas. There, right side angled toward the target, hand relaxed at his side. The gun in his holster might as well be a kamei, natural extension of his body. There's nothing studied about his stance, nothing calculated or performed. He simply the silence that follows is profound and complete. 40 Hollywood professionals, 24 reporters, and here it's simply anticipation. Everyone present understands they're about to witness something special, something that will be Rahama Haishima talked about for years to come. Ford's face shows absolutely nothing, no tension, no anticipation, no fear or excitement. He's done this motion 10,000 times in practice and another 1,000 times on camera. His body knows the movement so completely that conscious thought has become not just unnecessary but counterproductive. The timekeeper raises his starter pistol, finger on the trigger. Ford's breathing remains steady and controlled. His Bodic eyes focus on the target downrange, a simple black circle on white paper. In his mind, everything else, Bodicine, disappears. The crowd, the cameras, the competition, even Eastwood's presence, fades to nothing. Ford's mind goes completely empty. In the profound silence, he can hear his own heart beating. Once, twice, 3 times. The rhythm is steady and strong, marking time like a metronome. Draw. Ford's hand moves. That's all anyone sees. The hand moves. There's no flash of metal catching afternoon sunlight, no dramatic sweep of arm and wrist through the air, no theatrical flourish or artistic expression. The Colt is simply not in the holster, and then it is pointed downrange, hammer cocked back, ready to fire death at the speed of sound. The motion is so fast, so economical, so stripped of unnecessary movement that several people in the crowd blink and miss it entirely. There's no theater to it whatsoever, no style or showmanship, just pure distilled lethal function reduced to its absolute essence. The timekeeper stares at his stopwatch in disbelief. He checks the mechanism again, shakes it gently, then K-Hor checks it a 3rd time to be absolutely certain it's working properly. 0.4 seconds. The silence that follows is the silence of professional recognition, the silence of watching absolute perfection in motion, the silence of witnessing something that pushes the boundaries of human possibility. Eastwood's confident smile completely disappears. He looks down at his own gun, still secure in its holster then. Back at Ford's Colt, already returned to leather as if nothing had happened. The entire sequence, draw, aim, and holster, took place in the space between human heartbeats. "Jesus Christ, Glenn," Eastwood says, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do you even do that?" Ford cuts him off with a single look. When Ford speaks, his voice is quiet, but carries clearly across the suddenly silent backlot. "You work for the cameras, Clint," Ford says without any trace of anger or judgment. "I work for real. You can fool a camera with tricks and editing. You can't fool a bullet with anything." Ford starts to walk away from the firing line, then stops and turns back to face Eastwood. What he says next, man will stay with the younger actor for the rest of his life. Speed isn't about having fast hands, Clint. It's about not wasting a single unnecessary motion. Every movement costs precious time. Every extra inch of travel is another 1/10 of a second added to your draw. When it really matters, when your life actually depends on it, those 1/10ths of seconds mean the difference between walking home to your family and being carried home in a pine box. Eastwood nods slowly, absorbing every word. He's hearing something he's never heard before, not technique or tips or advice. He's hearing fundamental truth about life and death and the narrow margin that separates them. "How long does it take?" Eastwood asks. "How long to get that fast?" Ford considers the question carefully before answering. 20 years of dedicated practice every single day. or about 20 minutes of absolutely needing to stay alive. The charity competition ends with Ford's inevitable victory, but nobody talks about the prize money or the funds raised for polio research. They talk about the moment they witnessed, about watching a true master, Naskalam, demonstrate perfect mastery of his craft, about the difference between doing something well and truly knowing something at the deepest possible level. Over the following weeks, the story spreads through Hollywood like wildfire. Not in the trade papers, which focus on the charitable aspects and the money raised for medical research. The real story travels through the ferry, bars and commissaries and private clubs where industry professionals gather after hours to discuss their craft. With brutal honesty. Did you see Ford draw yesterday? Made Eastwood look like he was moving through thick molasses. 0.4 seconds. I timed it myself with my own stopwatch. That's not normal human speed. That's something else entirely. Eastwood, to his considerable credit, doesn't allow wounded pride to poison the valuable lesson he's been given. He starts practicing his draw differently. Less flash and showmanship, more substance and efficiency. Less performance, more preparation. Within 6 months, his own draw time drops to 0.6 seconds. Still not Ford's superhuman level, but respectable and professional. When a fistful of dollars makes Eastwood an international star 2 years later, he remembers that sweltering afternoon on the Universal backlot. Remembers the economy of motion he witnessed. The complete absence of lighter Tara, Nuzuru Bart's wasted energy, or unnecessary movement. The profound difference between looking fast on camera and actually, being fast in reality. In interviews decades later, Eastwood will publicly credit Ford with teaching him that real speed isn't about showmanship or style. It's about absolute commitment to the task at hand. About practicing a single movement 10,000 times until the conscious mind learns to get completely out of the body's way. But Ford himself never talks about that day. Never mentions his record-breaking time or Eastwood's reaction or Kon Gitoy, Kon Sonic Fold the Don, the lesson he delivered. That's not Glenn Ford's way. Ford lets his work speak for itself, whether on movie screens or in real-life situations where skill actually matters. The Colt that Ford wore that afternoon, the one that cleared leather in 0.4 seconds, hangs now in a adored private collector's vault. The holster beside it is worn completely smooth from decades of practice draws. If you examine it closely under proper lighting, you can see the exact spot where Ford's thumb rubbed against the leather, wearing a permanent groove over countless hours of repetition. That groove tells the real story, not of a single moment of spectacular speed, but of endless hours of patient preparation. Of a man who understood that true mastery isn't about natural talent or genetic gifts. It's about nadavi, dedication to craft pursued with religious devotion. Ford's record still stands today. 60 years later, no Hollywood actor has officially drawn faster than 0.4 seconds. Some claim to have matched it in private. None have ever proven it under controlled conditions, with professional timing equipment. Because Ford wasn't drawing for cameras or crowds or competitions that day. He was drawing the same way a trim, master craftsman shapes wood or a skilled surgeon makes a life-saving incision. With complete commitment to tusaswai, excellence, and perfect understanding of what the task required. That's why Glenn Ford's legacy endures long after his final film wrapped. Not because he was simply the fastest, but because he understood that being truly fast meant being completely ready. And Glenn Ford was too weird, always ready for whatever life demanded of him. For more stories about Hollywood legends who earned their respect through genuine skill and quiet excellence, rather than publicity and showmanship, subscribe to Glenn Ford Hidden Legacy. These are the untold stories that really shaped cinema history.